So today we're going to be talking about quality in-home and virtual home visits. Throughout this process, we would really love it if you folks put questions or comments in the chat. And I'll be helping to monitor the chat. And then when we get towards the end, if there's some comments, you guys can just start talking about it. But when we started talking about home visits, Robert and I started talking about how, all the different things that we wanted to cover. And we literally could fill a whole week of training with all the different things, because there's so many components of quality home visits and how, the little things here and there that can really help make the best of us. So we're not going to cover everything today. Because there's no way we could cover it, and everybody has different situations that are coming up. But hopefully what we'll get to today is some little tidbits here and there that you can take back to your team, that you can utilize when you're going and doing home visits. But to start off, let's go ahead. I would like to introduce you. Many of you already know Robert. And Robert, I found a much more interesting bio of you online. So I'm going to embellish your short little bio that you sent to me. So I'm going to go with that. So Robert is with RISE, and he is currently a program manager over at RISE. We actually had something in common before we both came to Hawaii. We both actually graduated from Dominican University in California, which is it's a lot bigger when Robert went, but when I went back in the day, it was a very small college, a liberal arts college, and he got his degree in literacy and cultural studies. And then, armed with that great knowledge and not too much sense, he decided to bury himself deeper in debt by obtaining a Master of Arts in the Humanities degree from the same institution. So he's got a lot of educational background, but almost more importantly, he has so much of professional experience, and it includes stints as an average at best tattoo artist, which I did not know. I love that. I don't think I'll be getting a tattoo from you based on that self-assessment, but I would love to see some of the work. A burned out traveling salesman and a handful of entrepreneurial excursions, which yielded erratic levels of success and low levels of satisfaction. Robert has found his passion once he stopped chasing the money and dedicated his ambitions to building a better community. He's a father of 3 and has brought a wealth of knowledge to our team. He, in California, prior to RISE, he was an assistant director of shelter and housing for Catholic Charities of Santa Rosa in California, where he was responsible for the operation of 6 shelters and a 108-unit permanent supportive housing program. So that's Robert. Lots of experience, lots of things to bring to the table. And then myself, for those of you, I don't know a few of you, I think, but for a few of you that I don't know, I have been in this field a long time. I hate to admit. I actually started working with folks who are experiencing homelessness when I was about 15. I started a meal program for a shelter in Sacramento, California. Went to college and actually wrote my senior thesis on the use of shut down Army facilities, military facilities across the country, and using those as homeless shelters. And I'm happy to say that has been put into use here in Hawaii to some level. I started at Kalihi Palama as an outreach worker. We focused specifically on folks suffering from severe mental illness and homelessness. I then kind of moved around in Kalihi Palama as a case manager, a housing director. I was then the executive director of the Affordable Housing and Homeless Alliance. Helped to open up the Next Step Shelter, which was only supposed to be open for 3 years, and now 15 years later, still open, still needed, but looks like that will be shut down fairly soon. And then most recently, I've become the executive director of Partners in Care. And our role here is really to support all of you as providers so that you guys can do the jobs that you do so well of actually helping those experiencing homelessness. So with that, we're going to just jump right into it. I'm going to show you the next slide, which is kind of, let's see. This is all the things that we talked about we wanted to cover. So there is just so much stuff here. And so Robert's really going to lead this discussion, and we really want it to be an open discussion. We really don't want to get too much into specific cases because we know that will take a lot of time. But we want to, engage with you folks and see what some of the biggest problems are. We've had some recent incidents in some of our housing programs that have become, serious. We had a couple of places where people have been evicted for domestic violence situations. We've had some, suicides over the years, and those are all very taxing on you guys as social workers and homeless service providers. And so helping with these home visits can hopefully help read situations a little bit better. And possibly give you some ideas of how you can proceed with folks. So with that, I'm going to change it over to Robert, and I'm going to put this list in the chat so that we can continue to make sure that we're covering as much as we can, and that if we don't cover something on the list, we really encourage you guys to reach out to us, and we'll talk more about that. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Robert, and I'll help moderate.
Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for taking this time to talk about what I think is one of the most joyous parts of our job, because if we're doing a home visit, somebody has ended their homelessness. That's something that has to be celebrated. And so coming into the home visit with that in mind, here's a person who has done a lot of work, and made a lot of commitments and fulfilled them to end this. And now that they're living in a home, they have a whole different sense of self that they're building. And so our job is to help them along. And so what can we do to that? And so with that comes dignity. So when I think about that, I think about how can I view myself as a guest in their space. And so starts off with asking if I can come in. So it's not a knock at the door. Okay, we're here. I've got my clipboard, and I walk right in. It's a greeting. Can I come in? And we come in. But that a couple of steps have to happen before that, I believe. One is having good time management. The person we're visiting, knowing that we're going to be there. It's not random drop-ins. It's not on our schedule. This is a scheduled meeting. They know what we're going to talk about. We've communicated with them already about this. They know what to expect. They know about how long the meeting is going to take. And then there's one big question that I always like to ask after I ask if I could come in. And that is there anybody else in the house? And I've had some instances where there have been other people in the house and we didn't know about it. And that could be just fine. It could also put folks in danger. And so I want to urge everybody to make sure that when we're entering a home, that it's a safe environment, and that everybody knows. And maybe there is somebody there, but the person can't say aloud. And so maybe they could just shake their head like this, and then we can take the lead and say, you know what, it's kind of nice outside. Can we go talk in the courtyard, or can we go across to the park? And then we can flush out, maybe save somebody from a dangerous situation. But where do we want to go first, besides the hello and how you doing there, Laura? Oh, there's my list.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the goal setting for these home visits.
Sure. So I believe that we have to have a plan. And so it's not just come over and hang out and see how you're doing. We're here to help, and we're here to help people in a specific way. So having a plan which includes a crisis plan. And so this is something that should be done, I believe, in just the first few visits, the first couple of weeks, if not even beforehand. So a crisis plan includes, who do they call when this happens? Who do they call when that happens? Because as a housing case manager, it's not my job to help them when the plumbing goes out. I should not be the first call for that. And they need to know who is the first call for that. Who is the first call when they feel that their mental health is at risk? Is it me? I'm not a mental health professional. And so we can create a little chart that has a list of phone numbers, contact phone numbers. What is their circle? Who they need to connect with? Another thing that's part of the plan is a budget. So an honest budget. And now a budget doesn't have to be perfect. My budget in my personal home is nowhere near perfect. It runs somehow always short. It doesn't need to be perfect. It's to raise awareness, right? So the plan is really about awareness. The crisis plan, having them be aware of where they are and who can help them. The budget, being aware of their financial situation, what's coming in and out, and an honest budget. If somebody spends $400 a month on drugs, it needs to go on their budget. They need to, that it has to be there. If they're spending money on sex, if they're making money from sex, that needs to be on the budget. It's for them. It's not for us to look at and critique and all of that stuff. It's to raise awareness of where's the money really going. So, you know, ice cream and potato chips for some of us. And so I have to be careful with that. And then the case plan. So for my team, everything is related to housing. So what are we going to maintain your housing? What is happening? What could happen that will put the housing at risk? So those are the things we want to take care of. So that could be guests. So who is allowed to come in the house? So I encourage our case managers to do a personal guest policy and really get down. Who's allowed over? Is anybody allowed to come over? Are they allowed to come over at any time? Can they bring friends? Can they eat all your food? Can they do drugs in your house? Can they stay the night? Like all of these questions, and work with the participant to make their own personal guest policy, and then they can build that ownership.
And I think along with that, Robert, that's a really great time to also review the lease and the agreements within the lease and the house rules for their unit. And a lot of us, and I'm definitely partial to this, where it's once you get the lease done, you never look at the lease again. Yeah. But that is really a key thing to continuously show to our clients, is the fact that there are rules that we want to set for ourselves, but there are also house rules that need to be considered in all of this goal setting. Because if there are no guests allowed after 10 p.m., that's a house rule that has to be part of your own personal role and case plan with your client. And it's, you know, sometimes, you know, we often, I've seen where clients, like, they'll say, you know, and the house rules say that I can have guests anytime. But some of our clients actually think that that means that they don't have a say over who gets to come to their house, and then that they have to allow anybody to come in because there's no rule that says they can't. Some of our clients really need some assistance with setting their own boundaries of what they would like to see. And this often happens with DV clients. You know, if they're allowed to let somebody come into their home, it doesn't mean they have to. And so they can put their own boundaries up, and we can help them explain those to themselves and figure out what those boundaries look like. And I think the other thing that really works against us sometimes is many of our programs are housing driven programs. So we get referred a person and we place them into housing. And we often don't know them too well before we take them into housing. And there are timelines and there are timeliness standards where we really need to try and get these folks into housing as quickly as possible. And so, Robert, I was hoping you could talk a little bit about the purpose of warm handoffs and how those can work between providers on record. And what are some things that we should be asking those providers of records during those warm handoffs? Because I've seen so many times where we get a client, we move them in, and then we find out like 3 weeks later that they had all these issues at the shelter they were staying at. And that was never really shared, and it wasn't in HMIS. So we're kind of going into some of these things blind. So I was hoping you could talk a little bit about those warm handoffs.
Sure. The more we can front load our communication with each other as providers, the better. And so one of the things that I'm asking now, and learn from my own errors, is who else knows this person? So maybe the 3 of us who are working to end their homelessness right now, maybe we all just met this person within the last few months, but was there somebody that worked with them last year for an extended period of time that maybe isn't in this group? So are all the people that know this person can provide information at the table? And so getting the right people at the table is the first step. And then once we're at the table, just remembering that the resource that is available to them right now is just one resource that we're considering at this moment. It may not be the best resource for this person. And the way to find that out is for me to give up my agenda. And my agenda sometimes is, I want this person in this rapid rehousing resource because it's here now and it seems like it's got rapid in the name, so it must be a quick fix. But maybe that's not the right resource, and I won't know that without having open, honest discussions with my other service providers and going back through files and reading case notes and really taking a little bit of time to understand who it is. Because the person who's doing the housing stabilization over the next year or 2, 6 months, whatever length of time it is, they desperately need that information. You desperately need as much information as you can when you're knocking on the door, you're asking if you can come in and be in their space and be in their time. So we recently had somebody who they had a resource for a certain resource, and we got the parties together and realized, oh wait, they need a higher level of care, and we actually had that level of care available for them, and we're able to move them toward that. But if we would have been following our regular course of action, we wouldn't have known that and could have had a bad placement. It's much easier for us to reassign a resource before they're in housing, right? So, because once somebody's in housing, it's so difficult to back up. Then the other great thing that happens is that we get to know each other and we work through problems. And if I problem solve with you, well, now you're my buddy and I know I can depend on you and I can come to you later and you can come to me and we build better community. And that's going to just benefit us down the line.
Yep, I agree with all that. I think I can visually envision some people in this audience saying, but then there are the providers that are just not there and can't provide that warm handoff, or for whatever reason they're no longer there. That's the time when it's a lot more difficult for you as a housing provider to then step into this person's life and really, create a space where they can trust you. And I think trust is a very important goal of this. And I think the other thing is the concept of housing first. And a lot of people get a little bit confused on what housing first means. And so, it does not mean that we house anybody in anything. It's that we create the least amount of barriers for that person getting into housing. And I think that the biggest thing with Housing First is, building that trust. And getting that person to move into housing so that if and when they're ready, they can tackle some of those bigger issues that may come up, whether it's a mental health issue, that now they have their own space. They're either being able to decompress a little bit, or it might heighten things. And I think that's one thing that we often don't expect, and yet it's such a reality. Actually moving into housing is a very traumatic experience for many of our folks, if not all of our folks. I think the people that have the best success going from homelessness into housing are those that who have not been homeless for very long and have strong support networks. But as most of you know, a lot of our folks don't have those support networks, and they've been homeless for quite some time. So, Robert, can you talk a little bit about the Housing First? You talked a little bit about it, and budgeting for that drug use and all that kind of stuff. But can you talk a little bit more about Housing First in regards to home visits and what you're really looking for on that?
Yeah. So we removed on the front end, we removed the barriers to housing, right? So you don't have to drug test, don't have to be nice, don't have to come to our workshops and jump through our hoops. We place into housing, but we also, our responsibility is to provide support services while the person is in housing. And that's the part that gets missed and gets put off and gets short-staffed and gets underfunded. And so what we strive to do here at RISE is make as many connections for that person going into housing absolutely as possible, because that is really, in my understanding, the crux of Housing First. Everybody focuses on that, remove the barriers to housing, because that's kind of sexy, right? Oh, we don't drug test anymore. Wow, you're putting anybody into housing. Yes, but we're also have all these services for the person. If we don't have the services to provide the support for the person, well, then we're not doing Housing First. And so if we're funded by somebody that says Housing First is a requirement, and we're just doing half of it or 2/3 of it and not doing the most important piece, which is the ongoing support, then we are now out of compliance with Housing First. And so that goes with being relentless engagement with other service providers. We just can't let up on them. We have to constantly call and email and hopefully soon knock on office doors and go to lunch and make the connections with people so that those services are provided. So Laura, you touched on the move from experiencing homelessness to an experience of living in a home. So I think about, I've worked in many shelters, and I think about the shelter, and there's community, and there's all these people. They all bug me. I can't wait to get rid of all these people. And all of a sudden you're in a small white box all alone. Toilet paper's run out. Nobody's cooking food. Nobody's talking. That would be terrifying. It's so lonely. And so what happens, you invite people over maybe, or you leave. So building the community supports for each person, and that includes, for us, let's go for a walk around the neighborhood. Where are the local stores? Who are the neighbors? Say hello to people, be friendly to people, have some sense to start removing that isolation, because that sense of isolation is, well, it's not a sense of isolation. It actually is isolation. And it's very dangerous for most people, right? For most people to be alone in their head, in their space, with no sense of community, made a huge life change. Homelessness maybe has been normalized for them. So what they're doing now is abnormal. Whereas me, I've been housed my whole life. So I think not being housed is abnormal. but it's absolutely the other way around for many of the people we serve. So to remain compliant and to embrace housing first wholeheartedly, which I do with all my heart. I absolutely believe it works and it's the best method for the majority of people. It's the services. Have to provide services for people and knowing where we stand. So what is my role? What's within my job description? What can I do? So what we ask here at Rise is, if not Rise, who?
That's a great segue. You know, knowing the resources, and you guys are coming to this kind of training, and there's other trainings that we have available. And if there's ideas of different kinds of trainings that you guys would like, we can set those up. And knowing the resources and knowing who to call is really the crux of it. And this is your support network. The people on this call, the people who have an idea of where you can get some kind of a treatment service that you don't know about. You know, one of the things that I love about especially, you know, so many people on this call that I already know, you know, I don't know everything, and I admit that. I know that Elizabeth knows a lot more than I do. And so when I need something and I can't figure out who to ask, I can call certain people and they may not have the exact answer for me, but they know where to point me. And so we really need to, I think we've done a good job recently getting out of some of our silos and really collaborating with others and really asking for that support. And then that kind of leads on to what I'd really like to focus on for the next little while is, you know, we touched a tiny bit on the safety and making sure that, you know, one of the first questions that we ask upon a home visit is there anybody else here? But I wanted to also focus on and see what you see as important in the actual home visit to keep the person who is doing the home visit safe, and what some tidbits are that can help them. I mean, we all know that it would be great if we could go in groups. That's not always we're not always able to do that based on capacity. Yep. And so some other little things that might help with keeping our case managers and outreach workers and housing navigators safe, while at the same time accomplishing what needs to be accomplished in a home visit. Because it's not just meeting with the client, it's also scanning the apartment and finding those things that are not spoken about within the apartment to help you gauge what's going on with that client when you're not there. So can you touch on some of those things, Robert?
Yeah, sure. So clear, you know, if you can go with a team member, that's really ideal. If it's somebody that you're unsure with, or that you have a history of you know, elevated conversations, aggression, absolutely go with somebody else. You just have to make that a priority. And then I'll also say that if you feel unsafe, you leave. You leave. Don't stay there. This is not our job. Okay, our job is to be supportive and helpful, not to put ourselves in risk. So there's a couple of things you can do to minimize that. Keep the exit between you and the participant. So if you get to sit down first, have them sit over there, always keep, and that's the same thing for people, even in offices. The way we stand when we're talking to somebody, with hands in front so people can see it is less aggressive. Make sure that you know, our body language really shows a caring, understanding body language, rather than I'm here to check up on you. Let's just see what you've been doing around here. It's not like that. And you know, letting the folks know that, hey, I'm here on this day. We're actually going to inspect the home, so I do need to see inside your rooms and inside your closets. I'm not going to go through every single drawer, but I just need you to open the cupboards and look for things. So definitely we want to scan the whole room. So for example, if we're in the kitchen, an obvious thing would be rotting food and stuff piled up, right? But another thing would be, where are the dishes? Like, there are no dishes even to get washed. Like, what is the person doing? So that could start a conversation. A lack of food, old food, just one kind of food. You could talk about, food insecurity and what those resources are. And it doesn't have to be, hey, you only have cans of beans in your refrigerator. What's the matter with you? It's not like that. It's, you could just note that, and then have a conversation about, like, hey, here are some food bank resources. They have great stuff over there and they're really nice people. And, maybe we can go on Wednesday afternoon and go over there to the church and get those for you. Other things are cleaning supplies. Are there any? Is the place clean? Is laundry piled up? All of those things would be entryway into how can I help them do that, right? So laundry piled up all over the place. Why? Like, do they not have washer and dryer, the funds? Do they not care? Is it not important? It could come into other personal hygiene questions. And then just really, real obvious stuff like, do the locks work? People keep coming into the house. Well, the locks are broke. Like, let's fix the lock. The jealousies are broken out of the window, things like that. They open, the room their studio apartment looks clean, but they open the closet and they just packed everything in there so that they could hide it all from you, things like that. And then, of course, there's weapons, paraphernalia, things like that. If somebody has, I'll say DVD players, even though that's even outdated. I was going to say VCRs. Like stacks of brand new appliances piled up. Like, okay, where's that coming from? What's going on with that?
Well, and some of the other things that working with Kalihi Palama, we had a lot of folks who, when they were on the streets, they were very quiet and they might have been sitting there with a pile of their stuff, but not really interacting too much. When they move into an apartment, we've seen it where they've felt some paranoia and unplugged every single appliance in the unit. Looking at those things and trying to figure out, why did this person do this? Is it they're fearful that something's going to catch fire, or is this, some of their psychosis that might be coming up? Is this drug related? Is there any safety issues with, they leave the burners on a gas stove? Things like that. I remember a case where an individual actually unplugged everything and was writing all over the walls, but their caseworker thought that it was okay to meet that person in the lobby of their building, and didn't go and inspect the unit. And he proceeded to go out and he actually assaulted someone in public. And it's not to say that we would have been able to catch and prevent that from happening, but if the caseworker had been able to go into that unit and seen the disarray there, it might have given an idea that they might be going through an episode of extreme stress and psychosis, and that might have been prevented. So those are the things that when you're coming up, and looking in the units, it's above and beyond some of the obvious things. Mm-hmm. It's, if they're unplugging everything, is that because they have voices saying that this is a dangerous place? If we had one person where they kept on placing their mattress against the window, and he kept on saying that there were always kids outside on the back balcony yelling. And then we discovered after a while there wasn't a back balcony. So then it was obvious that there was something else going on here. So figuring out those things when you go into a home visit, you're entering a person's personal space. And sometimes they let go a little bit more in that personal space, which is exactly what we want them to do. We want them to relax and be able to unwind. But that also might show us more of what's going on mentally and physically with a person. We've had some people who they didn't really share that they didn't have the capability to shower themselves or to get around in a unit. And so it was too late for, I remember one person who it was a little too late to change the lease and change where they went. But as soon as we could, we made accommodations to make sure that that person was moved into a more appropriate unit. And sometimes those things don't come up until you've already moved them into a unit and signed a lease. And that's kind of what I'd like to touch on next is the interaction with the landlords through this whole process. I know there's a few people on this call that will recall this situation, and it happens more often than you would think. We often have property managers or landlords that get so involved in our clients' lives and they bring their own baggage into that unit. And often, with a person, it could actually escalate a situation rather than be a helpful situation. There's that fine line between a property manager being helpful and being invasive. And some property managers and landlords, and even case managers, you get too involved in the person's personal life and might bring your own baggage to the table. And we really want to refrain from that. We want to be sharing enough about ourselves to build that trust. But there's going to be that line, and that's been a challenge on occasion with these property managers that have, they're drawn to that position because they really want to help someone and they get involved, and then it's like, okay, you've gone too far and you've actually helped escalate a person to the point where they're probably going to get evicted. And so, some of the things that I wanted to touch on, and Robert, if you can add on to it, is sometimes the best thing to do is to remove yourself or someone else who is obviously escalating a situation. And sometimes that's a landlord. And sometimes that's your partner, your case manager. For whatever reason, that client has gotten a laser beam on your partner and decided that they are just not cool with them. And sometimes that's hard for us to see in ourselves that, we're there for the right reasons. And this guy's arguing with me, and it's like, and you continue to argue and escalate. And we really need to be careful with that and be able to recognize and remove ourselves from the situation. So Robert, you want to talk a little bit about landlords and resident managers and dealing with them on a regular basis?
Yeah. Landlords, and I'll say landlords, but I mean property managers as well. So I keep saying both. Landlords, they don't like surprises. Just do your best to give them as much information as you can and as ethically right, so that they don't have surprises. So we operate a 5-bedroom home for youth with severe mental illness. And we were having our team meeting on Monday, and one of the case managers was like, "Gotta go." I'm like, where are you going? Oh, no, they're arguing over there, and I got to go over there and calm it down. There's a neighbor involved, and I'm all said, "Okay, text me the update." Not violence, just a yelling thing. I called the property manager immediately. I texted him and just let him know, because I know that neighbor is going to call him because the buildings are owned by the same place. And so just really appreciate it. Nothing came of it. It was just an argument. The neighbor wasn't involved in the aggressive part. They were just kind of being pulled into it, like, hey, let me tell you about this guy over here. But because I reached out to that landlord on a regular basis about whatever's going on over there, I mean, it's a house with youth with severe mental illness. They like to play music. They're going to argue. They're going to have their ups and downs, their good days, and their not so good days. but the landlord really appreciates that. Just keep him in the loop. The surprises about things like damages, the surprises that that's what really gets them. So the more communication we can do with along those lines, the better. But being very clear that we're not also the tenant.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have a legal contract in most cases with you and the person living in your unit. Like that's between y'all. Like you need to evict that person. I'll help with the like make that, you know, something not happen, but that's like I can't remove somebody from a unit for you. I'm not going to do any of that stuff. That is really, really touchy grounds right there. So being clear on where our grounds are, and then on the other side, letting the client know that I'm not landlord light. Like I'm not rooting for the landlord. I'm here to serve you, and I'm at your. So if you have issues with the landlord, we have to all help you and model some behaviors for you to talk to the landlord.
Yeah, and with that, I definitely agree. I think also, you know, we as a full community here, we're running out of landlords. We have way too many vacation rentals. That's my soapbox. I'll get off it now. But you know, we don't have a huge amount of housing units that are affordable. And so at the same time that the client is our client, we also need to respect the landlord and make sure, like Robert was saying, the no surprises, you know, keeping them in the loop as much as we ethically can, because they're the ones that are probably seeing our tenants a lot more than we are. So it's that back and forth. And so it's not, you know, we want to engage the landlords, property managers, whoever it is, to share information with us, not on a tattling base, but as a, hey, did you know so-and-so hasn't been at their unit for the last 3 days? Just wanted to let you know that, you know, though they can be helpful in those ways. And also, you know, whenever we're looking at like landlord engagement and getting new landlords, we want our landlords to continuously rent to us, because as soon as somebody leaves, there's somebody else that we could put in there. And we need to keep that relationship. So in some ways, yes, our clients are our clients, and that's our responsibility. But in some ways, the landlords are our clients as well. And one of the biggest things that I think we've accomplished as a community by placing folks in housing out in the market economy is that we've educated one by one these landlords that the people that they're renting to through our programs are their community members.
Yes.
And they're just as they have just as much of a right to housing as anyone else in the community. And you know, sometimes we get these landlords and property managers are like, we don't want any homeless people, and we don't want this, and we don't want that. We don't want anyone with mental illness. We don't want anyone with an alcohol problem. We don't want this, this, and this, and this. And it's hard to break through that. But once we do break through that and acknowledge that our folks make mistakes, we don't have control over some of their decisions, most of their decisions. But we are here to support you as the landlord to make sure that your unit hopefully doesn't get destroyed, that you get paid when you're supposed to get paid, and that you have a good tenant. And a lot of times we have to educate our landlords on what it means to bring in someone who does have a mental illness. We don't have to be specific with the client on what's going on with the client, but some really useful things that landlords can really learn about is if you're talking to Joe, he's the landlord, and he's never dealt with mental health issues in his building before, which I'm sure he has. He just didn't label them as mental health issues. Talking to him about how, you know, if you see something come up, if you see a person coming into the unit frequently that always ends up in a fight, you know, let the case manager know that so that we can support both the landlord in dealing with that situation, but also the tenant, because You know, our tenants, our clients, a lot of times they present really well when we show up for a scheduled visit.
Yeah.
And we don't want to do surprise visits. We want people to know what's coming. But on the same point on that, it's, you know, they're not going to divulge everything that's gone wrong with them over the last couple of weeks since your last visit. It's kind of like Facebook. They're going to put their best face forward. And that's what we do too. That's why we have Facebook. Or Instagram. We only put the pretty stuff up there. But we need to get down to the roots. And sometimes it's the neighbors that say something to us, or the landlord. And again, it can't be in an accusatory way or a tattling way, but it's really, let's support our community. One of the biggest complaints that we often get when we're doing big family move-ins is noise.
Yeah.
So, you know, and it always bothers me when a landlord, this just happened recently, they put a family of like 8 above a single person that works at night. That's the most recent one that I heard about. And it's like, that was just doomed to failure. And so it's thinking through those kinds of things and acknowledging that, yeah, a family of 8 is going to be a lot louder than a family of 1. And so, you know, trying to figure those things out. And it's not a problem because a family of 8 is going to be loud. But let's figure out how to solve this issue so that it helps everyone.
Laura, I want to add a little bit to that. So for landlords, I like to tell them they're the ones that are actually ending homelessness in the community. It's not me. It's not any of these social service providers. It's the landlord renting to people so they are no longer homeless. And to get that going with them, that they understand that they're the ones that are ending this social scourge that we have of people who want housing and can't get it, to get them on board from that angle is very helpful. And then also letting the landlords know that there's going to be visitors to this unit. There's going to be case managers, there's going to be social workers, there's going to be people coming on a regular basis to see this person. And in the beginning, you know, landlord gets my number. I say, in the beginning, you call me first. Okay, you something's going on, you see something, you call me, let me intervene first. And then so that is in the beginning because we want more intensive, and this is crucial. I can't believe I didn't mention it. The first few months, way heavier service than going down, and then probably need to kick it back up. But that first move in, those first few weeks, we don't do move-ins. We only do them on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We never do a move-in on Thursday and Friday. We don't do a move-in before a holiday. So like this week, we wouldn't do any move-ins today. Tomorrow's a holiday. So anybody that's moving out of the RISE shelter into housing, they're going to wait till Monday. We need to have the services available. I also want my weekends. I want my holiday. So intensive services, landlord knowing there's going to be people coming over, and landlord knowing that they can call on me to help them. And then as time goes by, we have the other follow-up conversation later. It's like, hey, you know what? Johnny's been doing great. Or Johnny's been doing the same trouble-y thing for the last 3 months. You know how to handle it now. You don't have to call me. Just go knock on this door, right? And so we pass that responsibility off, and then the client also knows that, like, hey, you know, I'm going to step back a little bit now. You really got this. You really got this.
This is great. We've got about 10 minutes left, and so I wanted to make sure that we open it up to any questions that people have or any comments that people have, any experiences that you want to share. You can unmute yourselves and just raise your hand and we'll call on you. And if not, we'll just keep on talking, but we wanted to open it up. Any specific situations or ideas that you folks have? Okay, then I'll just raise your hand if you do want to speak up. One of the things that often comes up And I thought this was a really good point that you said the other day, Robert. And I wanted you to touch on the difference between equity versus equality.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think many of you have seen the meme of the three people trying to look over the fence, and there's three boxes. Everybody gets a box. Only one person can see over the fence, but just stack them differently. Give somebody two boxes, somebody one box, someone doesn't need a box. And then everybody can see over the fence. My reply to that meme is you could also buy everybody a ticket and then they can get into the game and they don't have to look over the fence anymore. But that's another thing. Overthinking memes. So it's so hard to get away from, we did this for person A, now we have to do this for person B. And we don't. We don't provide equal service to every single person. We want to provide equitable service. So we have to sit and we have to talk, and we have to talk to those other service providers and find out really what this person needs from our point of view. Then spend time with them and see what they need from their point of view. And those things that match up are what we need to handle first. And then we provide equity. And some people just take up our time, right? They're just always knocking, they're always there. And it seems like every time I walk by, they're just looking at me with a question. I got a question for that guy. But maybe, that's not who really needs to get all the time. And maybe that quiet person who doesn't seem like they're any work at all, they may need more support than they're leading in. So to provide the equitable service, I've seen so many times, I have seen people be overserved. An example of that, at one time I was working in a large shelter, like 213 beds, adult shelter, and dude's just like sitting around middle of the day. I'm like, what are you doing here? Oh, I got this, I got to do this workshop. I got to do 3 workshops this week. So they're just sitting there waiting for a workshop instead of going out and doing anything to resolve their homelessness, doing anything to improve their life, to build community. They're sitting in the shelter because we've created this overserving, right? So every appointment we have is going to be 1 hour. Why? Why 1 hour? Why not a 15-minute walk and talk and you're good? Bam, out of here. Good. Love you. See you later. Why not 2 hours? Right? People need different amount of time. And I know for me, it takes me a little while to get comfortable and to talk and to really get to the root of things and some of my thought patterns just for me, and I'm relatively healthy, is pretty circuitous. Well, it takes me a while to get there. It's a windy road in my head. So getting away from thinking that everybody's going to get equal service and we provide these 5 things and everybody gets these 5 things no matter what. And if we don't give everybody these 5 things, that we're doing somebody harm. And it is not the case. It could very much be the other way around. And we're not going to know that until we sit with them.
Yeah, one of the things that I remember, one of my first clients, I would do a home visit pretty regularly, and he came to my office pretty regularly as well. So not much changed in his unit. But one thing I did notice is that he never ate any vegetables. I mean, like none. He was pretty unhealthy physically. And so one of my home visits was actually just meeting him at Times Market, and then taking his groceries home for him and spending 10 minutes in the house. But we talked and joked so much, and I learned so much about him walking the aisles of Times supermarket than I ever would if I just sat in his unit and said, how's life? Because it was a much more natural, interaction. And so sometimes home visits don't require more than a minute in and out, and doing something else, going for a walk, walking around the building, looking at the amenities. You know, simple things like that. The home visits are very important, but that's not necessarily where what you need to get out of a home visit is where you're going to get it. So, you know, make sure that you're a little bit more flexible on some of those things. One of the other things that from the safety perspective, you know, going with a partner, calling up LEP if they've had any involvement with you and your client, or if they know the landlord, seeking out some assistance from the landlord engagement program. But one of the other things is, especially if you've had any trouble, but also pretty much any other time, the rest of your team should know where you are.
Absolutely.
And yep. And so, and then this happened the other day with a couple of you that are on the phone. There's one building where we have several people, and we actually had 2 case managers in the same building, and they didn't know it. And so, I mean, it's situations like that where it's like, you know, when I talk to LEP, we talk constantly about them making sure that it's on their calendar. If there's a home visit and you're sharing your calendar with everybody on your team, that your supervisor, if there's been any issues or if you foresee some issues, that there's extra eyes watching or available. You know, getting those things in order on a regular basis is really important for the safety side of things. I remember with Gracie, she had some tough clients, and she was very capable and liked to go out on her own. But with a couple of situations, she actually would call me when she was leaving to go somewhere, and then call me every 15 minutes. And that was just something. And then she called me when she was done and actually driving away. You know, I don't like people going into those situations knowing that there's going to be something traumatic that happens. But if you find yourself in that situation, your team should know, whether that's an outreach situation or a housing situation. And so using the calendar and the digital stuff that we have accessible to us is use it to your advantage. Yeah.
Yeah, Laura, that's a great point. Just tell your office mates, I'm going to home visit for Robert. Right? Just letting them know, verbalizing it, having your calendar also makes doing your mileage really good. You can back that up. Your time and activity reports. Different meetings, sorry. And then so let's say you go to safety again, you go to a home visit, they're not doing good. Like they're just not doing good. Emotionally, places a mess. I hope everybody knows how, and if you don't, get a teammate and learn how to call for a wellness check.
Yeah.
So wellness check, you can call law enforcement. They will come. They will send officers out that are specially trained with mental health first aid, all their other skills, and they will come and make sure that person's okay. And if they're not okay, they can take them to someplace where they can get okay. And that's a wonderful, wonderful resource. I've used it an incredible amount of time. Tried to get the number direct to Mobile Crisis. They wouldn't give it to me in my other community. I tried even looking over the shoulder of an officer once when they were calling it. But it's a great resource because guys with guns and gals with guns coming to the door can be scary. It's scary for the officer too. So we give them the information and they can come and they can help that person.
Well, and wellness checks can often change a person's opinion of what a police officer's duties are.
It did mine.
Yeah. So really recognizing that they are here to protect and serve and to do wellness checks. I think that leaves us on a very good point. You know, the last thing that I would really highly recommend, and we'd like feedback on this training if you guys would like to talk more about specifics. like goal setting, actually putting templates together, things like that to help out, we can do that. We just wanted to start this first one out a little bit more casually. So please let Elliot or myself or Robert know if you guys want to have a second session, and what specifically you'd like to touch on. But I wanted to end with just the simple concept that most people forget about, and that's debriefing after a tough home visit or a tough case. I think, we have some very excellent examples. I've been through many debriefings. We've had a few debriefings here. It's okay to have a really rough time and to acknowledge that you're having a hard time with a client or that a specific situation went bad. And debriefing with your colleagues is one of the most important things to help us both emotionally, physically, mentally, and it will help you move on and learn. There are always things that you can learn from a situation. There are also always things that you've done right. So acknowledging the things that you did right in a tough situation, and also recognizing what could have been done differently the next time, sharing that information with your colleagues. We have a lot of colleagues that come into this service industry with very little experience, and debriefings can be one of the most crucial things to learn from. They can be scary. Situations can be scary, but you guys are your own biggest support group. Use that. Use the experience of others. Use the perspective of others to really help you through those situations and to make it better for both you and our clients, and in the end, our entire community. So with that, we're going to end this, and I really want to thank Robert and everybody for joining us today. It's a short amount of time. We covered a lot of things, and we're happy to answer any questions. Send them to Elliot, send them to myself. Are these recorded trainings on the PIC website? I believe they will be. Elliot, can you answer that real quick?
Yep, they'll be on there.
Okay.
I'm also going to send out the link for the video in an email to everyone who registered, so you'll all get it.
Okay. Great. And with that, I want to thank everybody, and please join us again for anything, and pass on ideas of what you'd like to hear about. And we'll get the experts, other than us, who can help out and help with any training. Okay. Have a great day, everyone.
Laura.
Thanks, Laura. Bye.
Thank you.